Yeah, that looks like we're good to go. We ready? Marvellous, excellent. Good morning, everybody. So we'll start working our way through the agenda. So apologies for absences. We've had apologies from Councillor Pritchard, and we're just waiting on Kev to see if he joins the meeting. Do we have any declarations of interest? No. Minutes from the last meeting. Any comments, queries, or questions on the minutes?
No, none from me.
No, thank you. And then actions. Oh no, it's got chairs announcements. I haven't been made aware of any, so I don't think there are any chair announcements. And an action log, I think there weren't. There wasn't anything on the action log to follow up. So if we can move on to the first report then, so that's agenda item number 7, the annual report. Who's taking that?
I think that's me, Chair. So yes,
thank you, Paul.
It's straightforward for those members who haven't been on the local pension board for the last year. It's custom for the local pension board to report to the full council every year on its activities in the same way that the pensions committee does. The report very simply is just a digest of what the local pension board has considered over the last year, a brief summary of what its recommendations and findings are, and then a summary of the work programme for the following year. So this particular report, because we reported in December last year, this report only covers 2 meetings. So it will be updated after this meeting to include everything that's been discussed and agreed at this meeting. And then obviously I'll be working with officers from the pensions team to update the work programme for the following year. So that's all I've really got to say on it. As I said, it's quite straightforward. It doesn't generally generate a lot of debate at council, but it does allow us to demonstrate that there is a link between the local pension board and the council, and demonstrates what the board is and how it's fulfilling its role.
No, thank you, Paul. Actually, that answers the question around the forward programme, because I know we discussed that at the last meeting. So it's good to hear there'll be an update. When does this actually go to full council?
I think we're currently programmed to go to the meeting in September.
September.
29th of September.
29th of September. Excellent, thank you. Has anybody got any questions on the report or any comments? Julie?
I've just got a point of accuracy, perhaps that 3.1 should state that it's actually laid out in section 7 below, rather than 6.
Yeah, yeah, that's fine. I may just say set out below.
Yeah,
because it's
perfect.
Yeah, thank you.
No, thank you. Any other questions, Andrew?
Yeah, I understand that the Westfield is the administering authority. Does this get provided to the North as a matter of course as well? I just wanted to understand if there was any protocols there.
No, it doesn't. And I assume the same is true for the annual report of the Pensions Committee as well, as their bodies formed by West Northamptonshire Council. They get reported into West Northamptonshire Council, full council. Is that the same of the report of the Pensions Committee, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, that's correct. Yeah, in terms of if you like, the oversight of the admin authority itself of the work that is delegated to the Pensions Committee. I mean, obviously that's what the purpose of that is. The public documents, if you like, things like the annual report and accounts of the pension fund itself, which obviously every employer has access to, every scheme member has access to. But yeah, I mean, some of these, the scrutiny is for a very specific purpose. And obviously the scrutiny of this is, as you say, it's the responsibility of the admin authority to establish the local pension board. And therefore it's felt appropriate to, as you say, to take a report to that body. But beyond that, I mean, the North are obviously the second largest employer in the fund, but there are other large employers as well. And we certainly don't yet, it doesn't go to them all.
Thank you for that explanation.
Oh, thank you, Mark. So if there's no further comments or questions on that one, I think, do we just note that the council will note this report in due course?
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. Right, if we can move on to agenda item number 8, and that is the administration performance report. Mark, are you taking this one?
I'll take this one, thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Michelle, over to you.
Thank you. So this report this time round is quite a light report in terms of content. So we've got the usual information in there, and just really to draw your attention to the KPIs, just to confirm they're looking really positive there, with all of them being met, just with the exception of one there. The details of the one in May that was missed is under section 5.2, just for extra detail. Under the contribution section, just again, just really to point out really good news there in terms of contribution payments received, 100% received on time for March and April, so no concerns there. One slight update under 5.3.4. So as you may recall, last time we reported a material breach of the prudential statements not going out on time. So since the last meeting, really just to confirm that those statements were issued by the extended deadline. So in terms of that scenario there, that's fully concluded, and the pension regulator hasn't proposed any further action on that at the moment. So it's just reassuring that the statements have gone out and the members have received what they needed to receive on that. Apart from that, there's no other further comments on this report this time around, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions on that report? Julie?
Sorry, Michelle, thank you. I was just wondering, under 5.3.4, the prudential, how have we gained assurance that actually they did meet that April? Is that because they've told us, or have we actually checked with members who should have received the statements?
That was via Prudential themselves that confirmed to us that they have sent all those statements out. What would have been the next step if they hadn't have done that? We would have contacted members to say, obviously there's further delays. We haven't heard from members to the contrary to say they haven't received them. So we assume that Prudential haven't got any reason to tell us they've gone if they haven't. So I think we're quite confident that that's been dealt with. And obviously the pension regulator is keeping quite a close eye on them as well. And we've updated them with that information, as I'm sure they have done as well.
Thank you. Corey, did you want to come in there to comment on that? And then we'll take a question from Councillor Weatherall.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just to confirm, I am a member of the Prudential ADCs, as is other members of the office, and we have received our statements. So we know from that exercise that they have been sent out.
Thank you. Thank you for that confirmation. Andrew?
Yeah, apologies, might be my lack of knowledge here. I wanted to understand where the responsibility lays for these DC type products, these ABCs, in terms of governance. If they Prudential, I don't know if they're trust based and they have their own governance arrangements, or if we do an overlay governance assessment for our members. What's the situation there? Because I think I'm not that familiar with the LGPS arrangements, but in other organisations, I think there's a deficiency there. You know, so and I think we need to address that in large corporates. I don't know how it's done in this environment. I don't know if somebody could help me understand a bit better there.
Do you want me to come in, Michelle? It's up to you. Yeah. I mean, so the responsibility here is for the admin authority to put in place an AVC arrangement and to have oversight of that AVC arrangement. We realise there are deficiencies with Prudential, and we've carried out 2 reviews now with an independent party assisting us with that. So Aon. The reality is Prudential, if they get back to being, you know, as reasonably efficient as they were in the past, and they are perceived as the best provider in the marketplace, and there are very, very few other providers available. So part of the problem around this is that there isn't someone we could move people to. With Prudential, there are. I mean, someone like Legal and General is testing the marketplace, and they've certainly started administration for one fund as a tester. And if that is successful for them, then that would be a competitor for Prudential. So just to round off, the second review that we undertook, which we got the feedback about a month or two ago, was effectively saying probably the best thing to do is wait to see if Prudential deliver their improvement plan, and if so, they probably are the best provider available.
Yeah, I think that's helpful on the administrative side. I was also thinking about things like default investment strategies, default end game strategies, because sometimes members can be in the wrong end game. A lot of these products default to annuity purchase, and that may or may not be the right thing. So I think it's useful to have that additional governance overlay. I don't know.
Yeah, so we did review the investment selections available across them, and one of the reasons Prudential came out so strongly was because beyond the administration and beyond the additional work they did to try to engage with members, because they are M&G, the selection was the best available in the marketplace. And we did look at what the default policies were, and that they were proper lifestyle policies that would suit the membership as they aged, if they just stayed in it. So we did look at that. I think that was a couple of years ago now.
Okay, so that's confident that
was looked at.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have one very quick question, just for clarification. So on 5.4.2, it talks about the refunds that were paid outside the strategy period. Can someone just very quickly explain what the 5-year period is, just for clarity? Because you could read it a couple of ways, that they took 5 years to be paid, or they were paid outside of a limit. So someone asked after the 5-year point, if that's okay.
Yeah, so from what I understand with this particular one, it's in the regulations that we basically pay out all refunds within the statutory timescale that's set of the 5-year period. The problem we have with that is quite often, if members don't respond to us or we lose contact with the members, we find it very difficult to pay those refunds within that particular time. I think it's a well-known issue that it is a problem for a lot of funds, hence why the requirement to have it removed is still being looked at. But I think from a practical point of view, it's quite difficult for certain members that we either can't get a response from, or we can't locate them to actually pay that within the statutory period that we need to.
And does refund only apply for someone who's got a short service time anyway?
Yes. So anybody with under 3 months.
Under 3 months, yeah. So you're talking very small sums of money. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that clarity. Right. Are we happy to move on to the next report? Oh, Julie.
Sorry. Yes. Just wanted to clarify. So ordinarily, it would be the refund would be processed through payroll if they'd had less than 3 months service, I believe. But I thought it was if they had less than 2 years service that it would actually be paid out by the administering authority. Is that correct?
Yes, apologies. I think that is still the case, is it, Mark?
The vesting period, when it did go down to 3 months but then it went back up to 2 years, didn't it? In the fairly recent past. So yes, you're right. But if someone gets a refund through payroll, they're deemed not to have joined the scheme. It's kind of like a different, if you like, different definition. So these are ones where
so these are 3 months to 2 years where the member has then withdrawn from the scheme and requested that refund within that period. So it could be a large amount. So there could be a deferred member left the employment and you've lost contact with them and you've not been able to trace them.
Yeah, I mean, I think all this is whether we So the way around it to be completely compliant with legislation would be to pay this money into a non-interest bearing account, and then if the member gets in contact or we trace the member, then we would pay it out of that account into the hands of the member as a refund. However, the industry effectively said this is madness, and it was said that the regulations are going to be changed. So everybody is effectively, if they're doing their job up, they're reporting these immaterial breaches through their breaches register, recognizing it's not completely compliant with the legislation, but the legislation will be updated at some point.
Yeah, and you're still acting in the best interest of the member by doing everything you can to try and get that refund back to them.
Yeah, I mean, we've gone through exercises to look at old ones where they haven't, but you get very little take up, even if you make contact again, unfortunately.
No. Anyway, right, we shall move on. I'm sure we could talk about the whys and wherefores of that, but right. So we are now on to agenda item number 9, the governance and compliance report.
Yes, thank you. So again, a fairly light report for this one. We're waiting for some bigger developments still to come out, as we were last time, in terms of good governance review, code of practice. But what we have in this one, which ties in quite nicely with the admin report, is under section 5.1. So there is a performance update there in regards to Prudential. So as you'll see there, a letter was circulated and it did highlight the issues that have arisen, the steps that haven't been undertaken, and the expected timescales. So as we've discussed, we are confident that the statements have gone out. So we have seen a result there in terms of performance for that. We're still seeing some issues at the moment, but obviously it's still early days from when the letter was issued. So we need to give them a bit of time to obviously implement some of those changes and to get some of the new processes in place. So all I can say really is that's an area that we'll continue to monitor, and hopefully over the upcoming months we'll see a big improvement there. So under section 5.2, there's a bit of an update there on the pension dashboard programme. So there has been a progress update report published, and also a blog produced as well that covers some key topics again, such as what we need to do to prepare timelines, the data matching there. So where we are now with it is that the Department of Work and Pensions are due to publish their response to the consultation over the summer period. And as a result of that response, the Pension Dashboard Programme will issue a consultation on the draft standards. So those two things are due to happen, well, starting from the summer, and then obviously the dashboard programme will pick up following the DWP. In addition, the pension regulator has very recently published new guidance on ensuring compliance with the requirements. So really the key message from the pension regulator at this point is that schemes should start taking action now to prepare for the dashboards. So in terms of the fund, we have started doing like the background research into the dashboards. Some members of staff have started attending the webinars. Research into the systems and the delivery have started to be undertaken as well. Obviously, one of the main focuses on this project will be data. We already have the iConnect system in place for most of our employers, and we also have validation checks in place as well. So from our point of view, we're in quite a strong starting position on this project. It's just making sure now that as we move forward, we keep up to date with the programme and where we are with developments, and keep an eye out for things as they're released to see if there's any impact on us. The only other thing to mention in the main body of the report is under section 5.3. So this is a section that we bring to you where we're just highlighting all the policies and strategies, either if there's been small amends made or whether there's actual policy reviews going through at the moment. So just to confirm that the data improvement policy and plan went to pension committee yesterday. So that was approved there. And it's an agenda item for this meeting as well. So you get sight of that if you've got any further comments for the next review. We've got the reporting breaches of the law to the pension regulator as part of this review as well. What we've also done for this time around in Appendix A, we've actually put together a review cycle of all the policies and strategies that we've currently got in place. We thought it would be an appropriate time to kind of pull all that information together and have kind of an overall view of where we are, what we've got scheduled, just really as reassurance of, you know, a couple of the ones that have been delayed for various reasons, such as the pension regulator, one where we've been waiting, obviously the code of practice, the government's policy and compliance statement, where there's been some genuine reasons that we've been waiting on those ones. Any overdue are obviously highlighted on the document, and the planned schedule for those to be taken during this financial cycle is in the comments. There's also a couple of comments around the proposed cycle, and we were finding quite a lot of them were on an annual cycle, which was getting quite hard to maintain. So we've tried to be a bit pragmatic, more pragmatic with some of those. And in Appendix B is just the usual training there, if anybody has any comments on any of the report or either of those.
Cool. Any questions, comments? No, I think that's all very straightforward. I thought Appendix A was particularly useful as well to see what's coming up and what's outstanding. And it was the comments gave an explanation as to obviously those ones that have been delayed when they will be coming. I think we just need to make sure that they are on those agendas. Yeah. Well, if there's no questions on that, we'll move on to the data improvement plan and policy, which actually you've just mentioned.
Yeah, thank you, Alicia. I'll take this one. So we've had a data improvement strategy in place for a number of years. We have effectively completely rewritten it. So rather than bring you sort of a track changes version or what went to the pensions committee, rather than take a track changes version, this is a completely clean draft. In effect, what it is, it sets out how we deal with data. And in the main strategy itself, it talks about in particular in section 7, the review activities that we do on an annual and cyclical basis to keep our data of high quality. And then in the plan, which is in the appendix, it sets out any activities we're doing really around two things. I guess one would be around any projects that we have. So things like the GMP reconciliation, things like McCloud, and then probably, which will be more of a permanent feature, anything to deal with the data scoring exercise we undertake annually. So the first item in the appendix is talking about the conditional, the common and conditional data fails, and what we're doing to correct those and what areas they are. So that's probably always likely to be a feature of the plan. The other things will be, we'll add extra things in as needed. And that's really it. I mean, we certainly want to be bringing the plan back every year. The data strategy, obviously, I think now we've got a cleaner version that will be on. I think, like everything else, we're trying to avoid annual reviews, but we keep an eye on it, and then we'll bring it back at a more sensible duration. What we've effectively been doing is working anyway to a number of these items year on year. So around about, I think it's sort of late autumn time, we start doing the data scoring, and then we produce a plan thereafter to fix anything that comes out of that on a rolling basis. We've obviously been doing the McLeod work to get the employer data in and uploaded onto our system in readiness for the remedy itself. And we've obviously been doing also a lot of work around GMP reconciliation. I'll leave it there because Corey will pick up obviously on the valuation later, which is another one of the things in it, but I won't repeat.
Yeah. No, thank you. Any questions or comments on that, Julie?
Yes, thank you. I was really pleased to see that there was a section in there about clear data submission templates and forms. From the employer side, I guess that's where the majority of the data errors will come from data that you receive from employers. What I perhaps would have liked to have seen is that there was actually an action in the data improvement plan. You recognise in the policy that the templates and forms are quite complex, and I didn't know if there was any plan to actually look at that to stop the errors actually coming through in the first place. I know that iConnect's there, which should help, but there are still forms that employers need to complete.
Yeah, I mean, so the truth is that as you rightly say, the 99% of our data comes in on a monthly basis via iConnect, in terms of the if you like, the heart of the data in terms of the majority. And those are effectively standardized templates across all of the industry that uses that software supplier. There are some optional elements, but they're obviously kept to an absolute minimum. I guess the areas we can make for improvements tend to be around sort of the other more manual forms that come in for ad hoc processes. But I can see Corey's got his hand up and may want to say some words around this.
Corey, do you want to come in now?
Yeah, sorry, just trying to find the unmute button.
You're trying to get the unmute button. Yeah.
Teams, not Zoom. That's all.
Yeah.
So we do regularly review the forms on a cyclical basis, and I have challenged the team to have a look at those over the next year or so. So my communications officer will be working with the quality assurance officer in the operations team to review some of those forms and look at them. The leavers form in particular, which is one the employers complete the most, that was reviewed about a year and a half ago, I think, and some of the notes improved. But beyond that, our software supplier is actually working on digital solutions to this. So they're talking about something called Retire Online, where there'll be no need for paper forms in the future. The member can trigger the retirement themselves through member self-service, through the iConnect dashboard that will set up tasks for the administrative authority and the employer. So there is a lot of work going on in that area. So we don't want to push ahead too much on that if the software supplier is putting other solutions in place. So we're trying to take a sensible, staggered approach to the way that we do it.
That's really encouraging, actually. The more that can be done online, the better, I think, because the leavers form in particular, I think, my staff find quite tricky, but it's encouraging that those actions are taking place. I don't know whether they should be listed somewhere in the action plan.
But they would be, so things like that would be in, say, the communications plan. So I think this is just very, very clearly about the data quality itself. And whilst there are things that we can do to help improve the data quality, I guess I see this more as the actual dealing with the data in a pure sense. If that makes sense. I mean, on leaver forms, we have tried to, as far as possible, reduce the need for any leaver forms. As you'll be aware, the theory is that except for ones which are retirements themselves, we don't need a leaver form for the majority of employers these days because they're on iConnect, and we use the data from that. So our challenge at the moment, I think, is around how we can improve it for the retirements, and that's all around the timeliness of what you need to deal with retirement.
Yeah, thank you. No, and totally, yes, it's the communication plan where that should sit. Yeah, on board with that. Perfect.
I can see Councillor Wetherell's got a hand up. Have you got a question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think it's a very useful report, and the strategy and plan is well set out. It's also comforting that the report said it's adequate and meets regulatory requirements. But the question's a bit of a subtler question: is the aim to be adequate and meet regulatory requirements, or in the longer term, are we striving to surpass that and aim towards excellence? I don't know if that what is the longer term, medium term strategic approach. Do we want to be a fund of excellence type thing? I don't know what your thoughts are on in particular, Mark.
Well, I guess I try to be quite measured, I think, in formal strategies and what have you. However, I mean, the reality is, if you look at something like the data score and it goes to the regulator, we want as high a score as possible, and want as want as little manual intervention on an annual basis. So in effect, what we want is the data coming from scheme employers to be as high a bar as possible. So we have to do as little work, as little intervention as possible. So I think excellence is what we are aspiring to, because that makes the fund far more efficient, and we don't need to look at records to correct them as and when we come to deal with benefits, for example. So yeah, I mean, I've been measured in my language here, but we want that data quality score to be as close to 100% as possible.
Yeah, it's more of a philosophical thing, really. Are we aiming to be compliant, or we really want to get as good as we can, and that kind of sets out where you think we should be. So that's good.
Well, thank you. I've just got one question. So on the action plan, I just want to check, how will that be tracked and monitored? I've just been looking through some of the other reports to see if there's a natural place, because I remember we have had other reports where we've got actions that you are tracking. Will they just be added to that, or?
We used to bring a discrete report tracking against this, but that was a little bit of an industry.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wouldn't want to create additional reporting, but if there are actions in there, just to give assurance that those actions are taking place, is there another report you can include it within? I was just had a quick look at the admin report.
It would logically be the admin report. We'll consider and
because I couldn't see for this time where we've got a table of where you've got other actions where we're following up.
Yeah, so because of the reporting timescales, we didn't do a business plan update this time.
That would be
So most of our actions we track against a business plan update, and so that will definitely come to the next meeting.
That's fine. So because I think there was 4 at the bottom of this one. Will you just include those actions, even if it's on one line to say actions are being monitored and follow up, and we have met X, Y, and Z? Not necessarily listing them all, but just so we were to remind us when we're looking at the business plan that there are some actions that you're doing with this policy and plan.
Well, it will either be in the admin report or the business plan update. I mean, because these strictly isn't a business plan activity, because it's business as usual.
Right, okay, yeah.
So if you see what I mean, so it may. We'll discuss it offline as officers and ensure you do get tracking.
No, that's good. So if there's no further questions on that one, I think the report is asking us to note this one. So was this approved by the pension committee yesterday?
It was, and normally I would say this is definitely the sort of strategy we want to come for pre-scrutiny to the LPP, because I do see one of the roles of the LPP is certainly taking a deeper dive, if you like, around data quality. We got into a bit of a pickle with resourcing, and therefore I was so keen to get it through the committee cycle that I did want it to go, and the meeting dates didn't quite match up for it to come to you first. So apologies for that.
No, that's fine. So if we note the report, and then we'll move on to the next agenda item if everyone's in agreement. So thank you. So our next report is so this is policy as well. So reporting breaches of the law to the pension regulator. So again, did this one go to the pension committee yesterday?
No, so this one is a pre-scrutiny one.
Pre-scrutiny
today, yes.
Excellent. And then I'll hand over to yourself.
Yeah. So yeah, as we've kind of touched on in the previous two reports, this particular policy was one that we had originally scheduled to be in line with the new code of practice, which, as we're aware, was due to come out in November 21. Obviously, this has been delayed. So we're in a situation now where we didn't feel it was appropriate to delay it any further, awaiting that new code, as haven't got an absolute date for that. So what we've done, we've gone and reviewed the policy based on the current code of practice, and reviewed it up to the point that we can do as of today's date. The new code, as we understand it, is due to compromise of the modules that are already in operation anyway. So what we think that will happen is that the reporting breaches of the law, particularly section, will mainly stay the same and will be lifted into the new code. And then what we will do, we will go back at the point where it is in operation and just double check on any smaller differences that have come out, and just make sure that we tweak the policy at that point. Just at this point, if I could just apologise for the error in section 4 as well, where there is a reference to Cambridgeshire there that shouldn't be there, so apologies for that. In terms of the actual code of practice itself, just as a bit of a recap, because obviously we've had a policy in place for a few years now. So it's really to identify the people that are responsible for reporting breaches of law, and the associated legal requirements with that. Part of the policy, which is key, is the actual process, how people go about making a report, and some of the details about the urgency of the breach, and the timescales that need to be adhered to. What's also really important for us as a fund is to make sure that we're actually recording all breaches, whether we report them or not. So we have an internal log where we do record breaches that we deem material and non-material, just so that we've got oversight of all the breaches that are noted and recorded to us, so we can keep an eye on those internally as well, and obviously put in any associated actions if we need to. So under section 5.2 of the report is really just capturing the main changes to the policy on this particular review. As you'll see there's been some general tidying up of the whole policy itself, that obviously has become a bit over date over time. Probably the important one there was the contact details for the pension regulator was slightly out of date. So obviously that was really important to get that updated. Just a note on the effective date, just really to say that this is something that we're going to put into all policies going forward, because we think it makes it a lot clearer to have a table to say exactly when the last review was and when the upcoming review will be. It just helps us with our management of the policies. In addition, under the material significance, another key change was the change from the admin authority to head of pensions. We felt that might have been a bit of a risk there, just to have a general admin authority as a point of contact, and a responsible person would have been better in that situation, just so that there was nothing that could slip through the cracks there saying we didn't know who that person was within the admin authority. And under section 12, there's just an additional section we've put in there to demonstrate any potential measures that could be taken by the pension regulator if any breaches aren't reported. So the actual proposed policy is in Appendix A, and that's the clean version that we're hoping to take to Pension Committee after your feedback for approval. In Appendix B, I know it can look a little bit messy at times, but that's the tracked version changes, just so that you can see directly the changes that all the changes that we're hoping to make. But apart from that, we're happy to take any questions on the policy or any further recommendations.
Yeah, thank you. So the report's asking us to review the policy. Obviously, this is pre-scrutiny before it goes to the pension committee. So any comments or questions or feedback from anybody? Julie?
Yeah, if I could just say that I thought it was really good, and it brings it completely up to date, which is as far as it possibly can be, which is really good. I know noticed from the track changes ones that the examples were in the existing policy anyway, but I really liked those because I thought it, you know, really brought it to life. So no, I thought it was really good. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the things like the flow chart, which I think were in there originally, looking at the track change ones, I just think it makes it really, really clear and easy to follow. So I think that's thumbs up from us. We haven't got any further comments or feedback. So
thank you.
That one, right. So if we can note that we've reviewed and given feedback on that one. So, and if we can move on then to the valuation update. If we can do that, and I'm sure Julie will probably have some feedback from pension committee yesterday as well. So who's taking those? Is it Corey? You taking this one?
Yes, I am. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just to summarise what's in the report, really, just giving an update on where we are with the valuation. In terms of the pre-valuation activity, so everything that happens up until March and getting ready to actually do the valuation has been completed. So we've done some initial data cleansing of data up until December 2021. We've undertaken covenant assessments for some of our most risky employers. So those are employers that do not have another employer standing behind them or a government department providing a guarantee. So usually charities, the further education sector, things like that. We've taken a look at those and we'll be and incorporating those results into the valuation when we draft the funding strategy statement looking at risk. We have also had approval for the main financial and demographic assumptions to be used as part of the valuation as well. That happened at the March committee. At yesterday's committee, the focus was looking at the process for setting contribution rates for the two unitary authorities and the two parts of the police authority as well, the Police and Crime Commissioner and the Chief Constable section of that as well. Contrary to the report, the meeting hasn't happened with the CFOs yet. That's actually happening this afternoon. That was a timing issue when I drafted the report. So we'll be discussing that with those CFOs. So the committee approved the process. We now enter in the discussions with the options available to agree what the contribution strategies will be for those employers for the next 3 years. We like to do that nice and early for budget setting purposes for those large organisations, and we take a stabilised approach to assessing their contributions as well. Because they're long-term secure employers, we like to smooth out the contribution changes over time. We don't have to jump them up or down because they're going to be ending anytime soon. So that was all approved yesterday, and we will be finalising those rates within the next month or so with those employers. With the report, I've also included the plan on the page that I'm working to with the project management group. That's setting out the key dates that we have to meet. The latest meeting was yesterday morning. Of that project group. All the activities are on track at the moment. We've collected in the data from employers. We're now working through queries with them with an aim to doing an initial upload of the data next Friday. So that data will be going to the actuary. From that, we will have some queries from the actuary, obviously, that we'll work through, and we can chase up any employers where we haven't had. That upload will help us to actually focus those that we need to chase up most importantly. I've also included in the report the key dates for any decisions that are going to be taken by the committee and the dates that those will be made, so that you can either attend those meetings to see the decision-making process, or you can provide scrutiny of them accordingly. That's in 5.6 in the report, which is page 100 of your pack. Other than that, I'm happy to take any questions on progress so far.
Excellent. No, thank you very much. Julie, did you want to give any feedback from, because obviously you observed the pension committee meeting yesterday? Oh, Julie, you're on mute.
So yes, I did attend and listen to the presentation. There was a focus on the sustainability side, the carbon side, which was very interesting. I'm obviously no expert, so I couldn't kind of repeat exactly what was said, but no, it was interesting, and definitely about the stabilisation, which Corey has covered here. So I don't really have anything else to add on that. Thank you.
No, thank you. I did particularly like your plan on a page. It makes that very easy to follow, and you can see where you are and what your key points are within that as well. So yeah, I did appreciate that. That was very good. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Andrew.
A big tick from me on that plan on a page. I really like that. I just wanted to see if somebody could help me understand about. I get the stabilisation of contributions. Does that necessarily need to lead to greater volatility in terms of balance sheet reporting in the employers? So are we getting stabilisation in one part of the pension aspects that are being reported in the employers and more volatility in another? I don't know the answer to that, and I wonder if somebody could shed a bit of light on that, please.
In terms of the balance sheet, I mean, obviously we're hostages of fortune to what happens with investment markets and things like that on the asset side and liability side as well. You know, you've got all of the demographic changes that might happen. You've got things like COVID that come in and can skew things, which we try to protect against some of those short-term shocks, because we take a very long-term view for these particular employers. So in the modelling to work out what options are sustainable, the actuary looks at 5,000 different economic futures, possible economic futures over that 20 years. And we set a likelihood of success criteria of 70%. So that means that in 70% of those 5,000 scenarios, we will reach 100% funding or more. We also look at the downside risk of that as well, and have a limit there that says that in the worst 5% of scenarios, we don't want to be below 45 to 50% funding level on that downside risk. So we do test against that, and it should mean that as we go along, those strategies remain fairly stable, because they're working in the way we expect them to, with the assumptions that we've taken over those 5,000 scenarios. And what we've seen is that this valuation, we're not actually changing the contribution rates. We're proposing to either freeze them or bring them down slightly, which would suggest that modelling is working and taking out the volatility on that side as well.
Okay, and just another small point. Obviously, as officers, you've got really good contacts with other schemes, and obviously other schemes have been through valuations recently, I presume. What was the learning from those? Was there any unexpected things? You know, we've been in very unusual times in the last couple of years. So what's been the outcome of recent valuations from other similar sized local government pension schemes, which are perhaps on a different rhythm?
We're all on the same rhythm. So the valuation cycle is exactly the same for all funds.
I didn't understand that. I didn't understand that everybody's 3-year cycle is the same. Is that? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So we don't necessarily have that learn, but the actuary obviously, our actuary advises probably the bulk of the funds in the LGPS. So they draw on that experience as well when looking at things. But obviously the reason we do it locally is because there are local differences in terms of the demographics, in terms of our risk appetite and the investment strategies that we have. But we do look to use the best practice from across the scheme. Also, after the valuation, so it is done as post scrutiny, the government's actuary department does look at all of the valuations on a like for like basis, and is looking to see, you know, who is doing well on these things, who is maybe taking more favourable approaches than maybe the numbers say they should do. And in the last couple reviews of that, following the last two valuations, we've been in the middle of the pack for that. Which is where we like to be on things like that, to be honest. So, you know, we're neither too generous or too prudent in that respect. But we do a review process. So part of my project planning is in April to June next year. After the valuation, we will have a lessons learned process at the end of that. A lot of that will be for internal stuff in terms of data collection, did the project work properly, but with the actuary involved as well, we will take any of that wider learning from the scheme as well.
Okay, yeah, that was really helpful, that point that you mentioned there, that we're kind of in middle of the road and not on the extremes of this. So that's quite comforting that we're not doing anything at either end of the scale in terms of this or not. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Any other questions or comments on the report? No, I think we're asked to note the contents of the report, and I'm sure we'll look forward to seeing reports come in and the next few meetings, because I think this will be a feature given the part of the cycle that they're in. So excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
Right, so we're all happy to note that report. So moving on, we're on item 13, the pension fund board forward plan. So this is just at the agenda list. Who's going to talk to this? I think pretty much is what it is, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say no further comments, but as usual,
Yeah.
if anybody
Got any
wants anything
questions
added to
on-
it and wants to see something on there, please let us know and we'll look into that. But apart from that,
Just
no
scan
further
around.
comments.
So I think we're happy to note that. Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
if people see things or think of things outside of the meeting as well, just feedback as well to think, oh, I thought we were supposed to be seeing this, or we haven't seen this for a while. Excellent. Right. So I think that brings us to any urgent business. I haven't been notified of any urgent business. So I think that concludes the public part of the meeting. I'll just go back to the agenda at the and see if it tells me to do anything else at this point.
Just need to exclude the public and press, Chair.
Yeah, so if we now exclude the public and the press and stop, yeah,